This is pretty much the easiest chimp strategy I can think of, and this strategy has existed for chimps mode for a very long time. So here's how we're gonna start. And I wanted to do a couple of videos actually like this where I talk about strategy in general. I have a couple of ideas about what I want to tell you guys about, and I know that people when they usually make these videos, they're like, they just start playing it, they never explain what's happening and what the synergy is. So I thought I'd do a couple of videos with strategies that I have in mind actually doing that. So this is gonna be the first one, and this is the easiest one that I can think of because it only consists of a handful of towers and it has a couple of characteristics. So the first one is that this strategy has existed pretty much since the early days of BTD6 and it still works after all nerfs and buffs and price changes and number tweaks across all towers. Another thing is that this strategy is super simple. I mean, the synergy is so obvious between all these towers. So let me just actually try and do this. So I'm gonna get a ninja, and the ninja is gonna go like this, and I think that if you place it correctly, you can have one more tower above it, and I want that to be an alchemist. I also rated this strategy in terms of how easy or how difficult it is to replicate in an individual game, and it's actually fairly simple because it only consists of 5 towers actually. Well, it's not exactly 5 if you count in these dart monkeys, but they're just, I'm gonna talk about them in a second. So it's a very easy strategy to execute in an individual game, but it's also very replicable, as in you can do this on a huge number of maps. And of course some strategies are gonna need some adjustments for the map, but this is just generally going to work, and if it doesn't, it's gonna need very small tweaks. So the strategy is, I think, very obvious to at least some of you, and that is the ninja, Oben, alchemist, sun, avatar, permabrew. Actually, maybe, did I say the order correctly? Maybe not in that order. Let me actually have Oben like this. And so I feel like if I have Oben like this, is that going to be enough space? Because I want to have the super monkey over here, which is going to become a sun avatar. I think it is. I think it's enough space. Now, something, for example, that is, I guess, specific for this map is that we had to remove the trees over here so we can place Oben. But usually you don't have to do that. And also, kind of, you want to probably have Oben in front of the ninja for the lead balloons around 28 and 30. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have an alchemist like this. This alchemist is going to go on strong, and we're just going to get the AMD. It's not like Oben cannot pop these guys, it's just that I just want to have an alchemist. We're going to have this guy anyways later on, and then this alchemist is also going to be able to buff the super monkey. So normally after you reach this point, you have 2 choices. Number 1 is to save for the Bloon Jitsu, or number 2 is to upgrade the Berserker Brew. And honestly, it's going to be a choice individually made by you guys and according to the map that you're playing on, but I usually like saving up for the Bloon Jitsu just because it's kind of an upgrade that I'm just going to be done with this tower, and that's about it. So I'm going to go for the Bloon Jitsu, which we're going to have the money for in a second. So for round 36, it's very nice to have the Berserker Brew and then just upgrade this thing to the 320 alchemist. Ideally, the placement is that the alchemist doesn't buff Oben, but in this case it doesn't. This is going to be a little bit of an overworked alchemist because we're going to have the super over here. So as round 38 is ending, I want to tell you guys about a little bit of a trick which you can do with Oben while you're going after the round 40 Moab in case you're missing DPS. So what you can do is, as soon as this round ends, you can use the brambles. That's a random spawn, by the way, but you can use the brambles, and the cooldown works in such a way that before the Moab appears, you're going to have the cooldown back again. And now this is important because the brambles actually last for 2 rounds, if I'm not wrong. So you guys see that? We have the cooldown again. So even if we're lacking damage, we can just have 2 sets of brambles, which you can think of as like huge spike piles, right? And so we have 4.6k. I'm not even going to buy anything, and all these guys are going to be more than enough to hold. Yes, there we go. They're gonna hold all the, it's probably gonna be extra Moab damage, or they're gonna hold the leftovers, but it's very nice to do something like that to kind of be mindful about it. Okay, so next up, we want to buy the super monkey, which is gonna go right here. But something else that you guys want to be mindful of is just saving money in general in BTD6. And so the super monkey has some very expensive upgrades, and you can save a lot of money onto those upgrades by just doing this. So ideally, I would like to have this village buffing, and in other maps you would like to have the village buffing all of your towers, but that's not possible for this one. So we're just gonna go like this, and we're gonna get a discount village. Now the discount applies to tiers 1 to 3, but keep in mind this super monkey is only going to have up to tier 3 upgrades. It's going to be a 302. So on every single one of these upgrades, we're going to get a huge discount. So I'm actually going to run the numbers, and I'm going to tell you guys how much money we saved after we're done with this. So I'm going to go like this. We're going to get the knockback, which is the most important upgrade onto this guy, and I'm just going to get the ultra vision for no apparent reason. I guess going for the top hat is more important, but I just want to kind of get done with the camo detection, then we're going to go for the top hat. And look at this thing. Thanks to these discounts, I feel like I might be able to buy both the laser blasts and, oh, almost not there. It's 2.3k, the plasma blast. That is such a ridiculous discount. So we have a 202 super on like round 45, which is just insane. So now we're missing the upgrade on the alchemist, which is, as I mentioned, this guy's overworked because he's buffing a lot of towers since the middle cross path. So what you want to do is you want to get this thing to the strongest stimulant. It's also going to make the buffs a lot stronger. And just take a look at this one. The sun avatar is 18.3k, and if you go like this, if you just check the original price, it's 21.6. we saved $3,000, and that's just $3,000 on a single upgrade just by getting this discount village. That's an insane amount of money. So next up, here's what you want to do. You want to get this thing to a stronger stimulant, and you want to upgrade this thing to the jungle jumps, and after that, again, as I mentioned, you kind of want to have, this village buffing all of your towers, and this is probably not the ideal way because it's not buffing the ninja, but that's completely fine for this one. So you're going to get the jungle jumps, and this is it. So far, I've been explaining about the towers, so what you want to buy and how you want to upgrade them, but I also want to mention what the idea behind this strategy is, and that is Oben's level 11. Well, actually, all of his abilities are kind of nice, but it's mainly the level 11 ability, which is called Ninja's Clarity, and it gives all magic monkeys in range +5 range and +2 Pierce, and the druids get an additional +1 Pierce, but we don't have druids, at least not in this strategy. So these buffs, the +5 range, but especially the +2 Pierce, are amazing. I mean, I'm talking these buffs are insane onto towers like this, especially onto the Sun Avatar, which we can now buy because we have the discount village, and we're getting it in the 50s, which is ridiculously early. And don't get me wrong, the range is really nice. We're not going for the millipath upgrades in the super, we're going for the bottom ones, so this thing actually kind of needs a little bit of range, but even though the range is nice, the most important buff is the extra Pierce that we're gonna get, because the Pierce, when it's going to get buffed by the permabrew, it's just going to make this tower go on another level, and that is because the way that these projectiles work is that the Sun Avatar attacks with 3 projectiles at once, but when you buff it, it doesn't consume 3 charges of the buff, it only consumes 1. And that goes for the Pierce as well. So if you have this tower which is getting buffed, which is getting extra damage, all of that damage is getting transferred to all 3 of its projectiles, and all of those 3 projectiles can go through as many Bloons as possible. You can see why this damage starts skyrocketing. Let me just check Oben's level. Yeah, he just got level 11. So that means that these guys, look at its range. Look at where it's attacking. So it's attacking on the other side, and it has +2 Pierce, and you can see the Pierce, maybe you can see it a little bit, and it is that when it starts attacking through these Bloons, you can see kind of these sun rays going through the Bloons. So it's attacking this one, but you can kind of see them at the back, and that is exactly what we're after. As this round is ending, and as we're dealing with these, rounds like 63, 64, and basically all the 60s and 70s, I do want to mention one more thing, and that is that you can have Oben's ability as a little bit of a safety net, which is a really nice feature, especially, it kind of makes you feel safe. At least when I think about stuff like this, like for example, the perma spike or something like that, I usually like having something at the end, so it kind of acts as a safety net, and this is exactly what the wall of trees does. You can think of this as like a huge, I don't know, like a perma spike pile which doesn't get renewed, but it's there. But as these rounds are going, I kind of mentioned that we have kind of 5 towers with this strategy, but that's not exactly true, because, well, first off, sometimes you're gonna need to start with, like, let's say with triple dart, or maybe like a sub-or dart, or maybe a dart or a druid, dart or a wizard or something like that, which is absolutely valid. I mean, these are situations that are just bound to happen on all of these maps in BTD6. And number 2 is that after you're done with the permabrew, you're just gonna have so much money left over that you're gonna have to deal with one more thing, and that is Moab class Bloons. So the problem that this strategy has is that it doesn't exactly deal that well with the bad around 100 and just huge chunks of Moab class Bloons in general, like for example rounds like 96, 98, and then the bad around 100. So even though we're gonna deal with this UMG, I kind of want to give you guys a warning about this round, because sometimes it's just not enough. The Sun Avatar cannot deal with this UMG and the leftovers in general, just because just so many Bloons. So you kind of want to be ready with, we're gonna deal with it now, by the way, but I'm just saying that it's not gonna be like this in every one of your single runs, right? So I'm just kind of telling you guys, be ready for this kind of stuff. Just be ready for these major rounds, and always have like the wall of trees, and make sure the wall of trees isn't full. It can hold a lot more Bloons. So some of you might ask, why are we getting the permabrew? We already have a 420 Alchemist, and the answer is really simple. If you take a look at the uptime on the buffs, you're gonna realize that these buffs they last a very short amount of time on the Sun Avatar. So look at this. As soon as it gets buffed, there goes the Berserker Brew. It keeps attacking, and then it's gone. And then it needs to wait a very long, well, it's not actually a very long time, but it's a very short uptime on the buff. It's both the Berserker Brew and the AMD buff. And basically what happens is, if you can kind of imagine a graph on how this damage goes, as soon as it gets buffed, like, the damage skyrockets, but it also, because it attacks super fast, the damage, just the extra damage disappears in a second. And so it has these short bursts of huge damage while it has the buff, but then majority of the time it doesn't have, just because it attacks super fast. So that's why I want to get the Permabrew, which I'm going to buy right now, and now this damage is going to become permanent. This buff is going to become permanent, and basically this tower just turns into a powerhouse that constantly dishes out the same amount of damage. So if you guys remember the round 80s UMG that kind of made it towards, I think it made it towards here, like where Oben is. Now look at this one. This is round 85's UMG, which is ramped up in its HP. and it is not even gonna make it past the perma brew. I mean, that is the difference that this tower makes onto a tower like the Sun Avatar. It also works well with the, with the 402 Ninja. Actually, you're not exactly buying a perma brew for a 402 Ninja, but it's nice to have it as well because it synergizes too. So now we're reaching the point at which we're dealing with basically everything, but as I mentioned, we need to think about rounds like 96, 98, and around 100, because even though the Sun Avatar does a lot of damage, it's just that these Bloons get ramped up so much with their HP that it needs a little bit of extra help. And you do want to get another tower which is going to help you deal with that. And I have a couple of suggestions for you guys. So first off, we're going to see DDTs around 93, by the way. So let me just show you guys how this thing deals with DDTs. And spoiler alert, it's not even close, actually. So yeah, look at this thing. Yep, it just evaporates all of them. And just keep in mind that Oben's totems also slow mob class Bloons by 50% of the values. And also the knockback upgrade from the super helps a lot in just slowing down these mob class Bloons. So everything works really nicely. So it comes around 95 and a bunch of DDTs, and I'm more than sure that this is going to be more than enough to deal with all of these DDTs. But keep in mind, if you don't have the perma brew, like, this is not the route that this strategy has to take. You don't have to go for the perma brew because it's super expensive, and then this thing is like $65,000. So you can just buy whatever you want, honestly. You can just go for another tower, and honestly, the tower that's really good these days, especially a tower that's one of my favorites, is something like the Carpet of Spikes. You might want to go for that thing. You might want to go for something like, I don't know, maybe you want to get something like an Archmage, which also works nicely with Obi. Maybe you want to go for some magic towers, or you could just fix the problems that this current setup has, and that is dealing with mob class Bloons which are super ramped up. So the way that you want to deal with that is, I'm just going to give you guys a couple of ideas. You can go for something like this, like a first strike, maybe even a preemptive. Actually, if we get the money, I'm not sure, we might get the money for a preemptive. You can do that. You can do this. You can get a mobile eliminator for the battle around 100. You can maybe try and amplify the damage that the Sun Avatar does even further by buying something like this, a Super Brill, which do we want to do that actually? I think we want to do that. Okay, let's do that for this specific run. And then what else? I think I mentioned this thing. I mentioned the Carpet of Spikes. You can also go for a Perma Spike, which is, again, one of the OG strategies. You just set up a Perma Spike at the back, and that's basically it. And you kind of want to overclock them. Or, again, as I mentioned, the overclock. You just make this thing as strong as possible. So what is the route that we want to take for this specific run? I feel like we want to make the Sun Avatar like the MVP and as strong as possible. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the Super Brill like this. This is, by the way, going to get buffed by the Perma Brew as well. And do we have the money? Oh, do we have the money for an overclock? Can we have this thing in the range of a discount village? I think, yes, I see it. Look at that. That's like one remaining pixel. Oh, no, we don't have the money. Just buy like $300, I think it was. How much is it? Like $200 even. Okay, so let me buy the overclock. And are we going to get it for round 98? We are going to get it probably for round 100, but I do want to get it for this round to just make the Sun Avatar that much stronger. And look at this thing, guys. I mean, look at how fast it attacks. It's just like a straight line of yellow, which goes through everything. And this is round 98, which is the round with the most RBE, which stands for Red Bloon Equivalent, which is basically the beefiest round in Chimps mode up to around 100. And this wasn't even close. And this is exactly what this setup does. So this thing amplifies the damage. This thing makes it do more damage. We're buffing its attack speed, and just the Sun Avatar goes ham onto these Bloons. And that's gonna be, you know what? It's only one round left. It's round 100, the bat. And usually, you know, I would go for something like a little bit more safe that also doesn't spend all of our money like this. So I would probably go for something like, I don't know, like a Spike Storm here, because one Spike Storm is more than enough to deal with the bat, or just kind of at least help out. But we are going for the full Sun Avatar DPS, so I'm gonna overclock it for one last time, and this thing is just gonna destroy it. And yeah, it's not even gonna be close, is it? Look at these UMGs melt. Yup, nothing even reached the wall of trees. Like, nothing ever reached the wall of trees. That's how good this thing is. But yeah, this is one of these kind of OG chimp strategies. And if you guys are interested, like, I do have a couple of them written down, which I wanted to kind of talk about and walk you guys through them. They're all different strategies. They're all based on different towers. They have different ideas behind them. So if you're interested in videos like that, let me know in the comments. And that's gonna be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching it, and I will see you on the next one.